Welcome into episode 149 of The Checklist, brought to you by Secure Mac. I'm Ken Ray.
And I'm August Trometer.
Bad breach, worse breach, 7 security tips before hitting the road, and a follow-up to a follow-up to a follow-up. You can follow along on this edition of The Checklist, brought to you by Secure Mac. Tales of 2 data breaches to kick us off today. We will start with the financial firm Capital One. The BBC ran a piece last week saying the personal details of about 106 million individuals across the US and Canada were stolen from the firm. That's about 100 million in the US and 6 million in Canada. While credit card numbers were apparently not stolen, names, addresses, and phone numbers of people who applied for its products were taken, along with dates of birth, credit scores, credit limits, balances, and payment history. Then getting even more personal, 140,000 Social Security numbers and 80,000 linked bank account numbers were compromised in the States. 1 million social insurance numbers belonging to Capital One credit card customers in Canada were also compromised. The data breach is believed to be one of the largest in banking history, according to the BBC. Well, it's good that the credit card numbers weren't stolen, I guess, but, this really does seem super bad. What sorts of trouble could these victims, potentially between a quarter and a third of U.S. adults, what kind of trouble could these people be in?
Well, I'm just wondering, the slogan now, I guess, is Capital One. What's in their wallet?
Yeah.
You're right. It's great they didn't compromise the credit card numbers, but honestly, I wish they would have, and only credit card numbers, because you can cancel a credit card number and reissue it with a new number. But it's nearly impossible to get a new name, address, or social security number. So, the credit card numbers are a preferable thing for me to be breached versus social security numbers. But these pieces of data, it may seem like not much, but they generally form the basis of how hackers breach your account. They'll call up your bank. They'll tell the bank they don't have the account number. The bank will ask for your social, which the hackers have, and then your name, which the hackers have, and your address and phone number, which the hackers have. And then the customer service rep will say, well, thanks. What can I do for you?
Right.
And then all of a sudden the hacker has the keys to your financial kingdom. And worse, then once they know that all works, they can try other banks, brokerages, online services using the same tactic. Then they can also use this information to sign up for new accounts that only they have access to. They can get loans and other things you have no knowledge of, and all of that potentially damages your credit rating. Being in the middle of buying a home or a car is no time to find out someone else has taken out a $20,000 loan in your name. And then finally, they can use this information to forge phony IDs, which can be used for all sorts of things, from selling them to teens who want to buy beer to carrying your ID instead of theirs while committing a crime.
Now, I will say there are 2 reasons that we're doing this story today. First of all, because it is the kind of thing that people should know about, just in case, you're a Capital One member, or even just, you've applied for a Capital One card and you aren't aware that this is out there. It's out there. So that's reason number 1 to do this. Second, it seems to me anyway, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems to me that Capital One did an okay job handling this breach. Obviously the best thing would have been if it hadn't happened at all. But let's talk about what they did, starting with informing people. They found out about the breach around the 19th of July, started informing people within a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm sure they needed time to investigate it internally. But for me, a couple of weeks is a long time. And that's after the breach occurred, which was, I believe, in March. So lots of damage could have been done in that period of time. That said, it really is refreshing to see a company confess quickly. Some companies bury it so they don't have to deal with the PR nightmare.
Capital One said it was unlikely the information was used for fraud, but it would continue to investigate the breach.
I'm not sure how they can say this with a high degree of confidence. I mean, once that data is exposed, it's not good for anything but fraud.
Yeah, they call it fraud for a reason. It's always amazing to me when they're like, oh, we don't know that anything bad happened. Okay, well, great, that and 50 cents. As for the 1st of August, or as of, the 1st of August, Capital One said it would notify affected individuals and will provide them with free credit monitoring and identity protection, which I kind of feel like ought to come free in every box of cereal at this point.
Yeah, maybe I'm just cranky today, but free credit monitoring seems to be the Band-Aid everyone wants to get away. So yes, it should be in a box of cereal. It sort of passes the buck to you, though, because if you have a problem, you're the one who has to deal with it. In addition, identity theft can go way beyond credit. And seriously, if you're a bank, your online security should be as secure as your vaults after closing time.
It really is interesting to me because a lot of times this, the free credit monitoring will last for a year or it'll last for 2 years. But I mean, if a bad guy is just thinking I'm going to use this one day or sell it one day or resell it one day, 3 years, 5 years, that's not a long time to wait for somebody who's probably been doing this for a few years and may have other information on which they're living currently.
Yeah, if it's a credit card number, they want to sell that right away. But if they hang on to stuff like your social and your name, those things aren't going to change.
Finally, Capital One did apologize, saying, while I am grateful that the perpetrator has been caught, I am deeply sorry for what has happened. This was a CEO or CFO or somebody. I sincerely apologize for the understandable worry this incident must be causing those affected, and I am committed to making it right.
That's a great statement by the PR team. And sorry, I'm still cranky. I mean, it's 1/3 of the U.S. population. They'd better be sorry.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to see them do? I mean, besides not get hacked?
Well, as I said, credit monitoring is fine, but that seems to be the standard cover your butt response these days. For me, they need to explain why I should stay a customer. What steps are they taking to prevent this in the future? And what do I do if somebody using my name and identity robs a bank and the cops show up on my doorstep?
By the way, looking back about a month or so to the show that we did about how bad guys could keep being bad guys, the 33-year-old woman believed to be responsible for the hack was caught because she was bragging about it online. So, if you're a bad guy wondering how to keep being a bad guy, maybe not so much. Maybe not so much with the bragging. Now, while we all wish that breaches like the Capital One hack would not happen, the firm seems to have done a decent job in the aftermath, in my opinion. Now, it's possible that I think they did an okay job because I know about this next story. StockX. A piece from TechCrunch says that the firm StockX tried to take care of a recent data breach on the down low. According to the report, the fashion and sneaker trading platform pushed out a password reset email to its users on Thursday, the 3rd of August, citing system updates, but left users confused and scrambling for answers. StockX told users that the email was legitimate and not a phishing email, as some had suspected, but did not say what caused the alleged system update or why there was no prior warning. Now, what had happened, it turns out, was a data breach. A spokesperson eventually told TechCrunch that the company was alerted to suspicious activity on its site, but it was way worse than that. According to the report, again, an unnamed data-breached seller contacted TechCrunch claiming that more than 6.8 million records were stolen from the site in May by a hacker. The seller declined to say how they obtained the data. In a dark web listing, the seller put the data for sale for $300. One person at the time of writing already bought the data. The seller provided TechCrunch with a sample of 1,000 records. They contacted customers and provided them information only they would know from their stolen records, such as their real name and username combination and shoe size. Every person who responded confirmed that their data was accurate. So it sounds to me like what StockX did right was require a password change, while what they did wrong was all the rest of it. Everything else in this sounds like what StockX did was incorrect.
Yeah, in contrast to Capital One, these guys decided not to take the PR hit, and they just forced the password reset. But In my opinion, in doing so, they cause themselves an even worse PR nightmare. So I think that's the lesson. Always tell the truth and do it early.
Now, TechCrunch says the stolen data contained names, email addresses, scrambled passwords believed to be hashed with an MD5 algorithm and salted, and other profile information such as shoe size and trading currency. The data also included the user's device type, such as Android or iPhone, and the software version. Several other internal flags were found in each record, such as whether or not the user was banned or if European users had accepted the company's GDPR message. Now, there's no message in there of payment information, physical addresses, stuff like that. I guess what I'm wondering is, what's the primary concern here? I mean, is it reuse of passwords? Is it social engineering? I mean, what kinds of things should StockX users be worried about?
It would be hard to get anywhere with just a name and an email for social engineering. I'm sure hackers are going to try. I think the biggest potential is the reuse of passwords. If they take another set of data that they get online with clear text passwords, they could potentially run a hashing algorithm against that, then match that up against this data set from StockX, and they'd have every single password in the clear. Once they have the passwords, they can credential stuff other sites like we've talked about here before.
That's really interesting. So you're saying basically they would have two parts of the code. Like they don't know what this hashed mess means, but they have these other passwords. And so that they can run a matching, basically if they can run code that would make a mess that matches the mess they have from StockX, then decrypting it's cake.
Exactly.
All right. TechCrunch has Jake Williams, founder of Rendition InfoSec, saying StockX robbed their users of the chance to evaluate their exposure by not informing customers of the breach when it happened.
I totally agree here. All they had to do was issue an email saying they believe their system had been compromised and they were resetting all passwords. Just one simple sentence. But they took the low road, and I'm quite sure they've lost some built-up customer trust.
Well, summer's winding down, but there are still a few days between now and Labor Day. If there's a trip in your future, there are a few things that we would like to suggest before you hit the road or take to the skies or sail the seven seas. Ways to keep yourself safe while traveling and staying connected. Oh, it's like a checklist on the checklist, August. It's kind of amazing.
Wow.
I know. It's been a while since we've done those. Item 1 on this checklist, lock it down.
Yeah, before you leave for your trip, you need to make sure all of your devices are protected. For example, back up your Mac with Time Machine. And if you can, back up to the cloud as well, with a service that does that. If your house burns down while you're gone, Time Machine won't help you. Back up your mobile devices to iCloud as well. Make sure all your devices have the current OS. And that will help protect you from any security flaws that happen to be around, and make sure to update all of your apps so you have the most secure version of them as well. If you're leaving some of your devices at home and they don't need to be turned on, unplug them to protect them from voltage spikes from lightning and that kind of thing. And then finally, it's a good time to double check your passwords.
Now, as I said before, there are a number of ways that people travel. One is hitting the road. So item number 2, don't pay at the pump.
As we mentioned here, credit card scammers are showing up all over the place at gas pumps nationwide and other places as well. Imagine being a hacker on a busy holiday when people are traveling. It's like Christmas. Data everywhere. These devices look like real card readers and are sometimes hacked readers. And they take your credit card number and name and use that to make purchases of their own.
Now, I'm curious, can we throw this idea of not paying at the pump out the window if we're using Apple Pay and the pump is Apple Pay enabled?
I use Apple Pay everywhere I can for just that reason. Since there's no swipe and no personal information exchanged, it's a much safer way of paying for everything. I don't have much experience with Android Pay, But I'd assume it's still safer than a card swipe.
And of course, if you're using Apple Pay with like a debit card or something like that, sometimes they're still going to ask for your PIN number, but just be sure and cover that same as you would if you were paying at the pump. Just using your debit card.
Or using an ATM.
Or using an ATM, right? Neither of which we're going to do anymore because, hallelujah, we have Apple Pay. In theory. Item number 3, free Wi-Fi can cost you.
When you're on hotel and airport Wi-Fi, the thing you have to remember is so is everybody else. So your data can be intercepted or hackers can attempt to access your device directly. Never use an unsecured network. And if you have to use public Wi-Fi, please use a trusted VPN.
Please, oh please, says Augustrometer. Item number 4, guard your email.
So many times we're asked for our email address to get that free Wi-Fi or other promotions, especially while we're traveling. Sometimes giving out your email is useful, but most of the time it's just a way so that whoever's collecting it can monetize it. Free Wi-Fi is never free. So they'll sell those email addresses to marketers who will then spam you. One way you can get around this is by creating a burner email that you only use for marketing purposes.
And of course, with a burner email, you want to practice the same password care that you'd use in an account that you actually plan to keep using or that you do care about.
Sure. I've got a Gmail account that I use specifically for this kind of thing, and I never bother checking it because it doesn't matter what I get sent. I just want the $3 off a burger. But if you're signing up with an account, you should still practice the same good password practices, strong, unique, and not shared.
Item number 5 on today's list o lists, be app averse.
Very similar to the free signups when you go online, apps, especially free ones, want you to set up an account. So first, ask yourself, do I need this app? And some apps are great, museum apps, city guide apps. These are all really, really helpful when you're traveling. But if they ask you to sign up for an account, use that handy burner email. And never, ever use your Facebook or Google account to sign in. They grab a tremendous amount of information about you when you do. Finally, when you sign up using that burner email, remember to use a strong, unique password.
Item number 6. This is fun when you're going on vacation. Prepare for the worst.
While Apple makes their devices shiny because they love good design, the thing is, thieves like them too. Take your eyes off iPhone for a second and poof, it's gone. So just use Apple's tools to help thwart the bad guys. Make sure Find My Phone is turned on for all of your Apple devices.
And item number 7 on today's list, protect that Mac.
If you're using your Mac on a public Wi-Fi network, and try not to, but sometimes you have to, but you have no idea who's nearby, and you should step up your security. Be sure you're using strong third-party antivirus protection. If you don't already own software that does that, download a trial version while you travel, but really, you should always be using one.
A follow-up to a follow-up to a follow-up in a moment, but first a word about MacScan 3 from Secure Mac. No one thing can keep your Mac safe. We just did a list of 7 things to do to keep your Mac and other devices safe while you're traveling. You know why we did that? Because no one thing can keep you safe. Digital safety is about a lot of things. Being smart about passwords, like August said. Taking care with what you download, like August said. Using a VPN on public Wi-Fi, like August said. There are lots of things you can do to keep yourself safe, like running good security software, like August said, and like MacScan 3. MacScan 3 is a great defense against malicious software attacks aimed at your Mac. It's developed by Secure Mac, trusted names in computer security, and developers of exceptional security software for the Mac for well over a decade. MacScan 3 detects and removes Mac malware, catches keyloggers, removes tracking cookies, and provides full-range or targeted scanning, all without crowding up your hard drive or slowing down your computer. Stay safer with MacScan 3 from Secure Mac. Sign up for a free 30-day trial today at securemac.com/MacScan. That's MacScan 3 by Secure Mac. Your 30-day free trial is waiting at securemac.com/MacScan. Boy, Summer Security Blockbusters is the show that keeps on giving. We talked at the beginning of July about fencing off parts of your information infrastructure. Then last week we got an email from Corey who wanted to know whether Little Snitch could act as one of those fences, basically blocking unauthorized individuals from accessing our Macs. Both Nicholas Tawchuk and August said, no, that's not what Little Snitch does. That's because Little Snitch keeps track of information trying to leave your Mac, not information trying to get into your Mac. At least that's what we all thought. Paul wrote in after last week's show saying you actually can set up Little Snitch to block all incoming connections. You just have to create a rule. Basically, I created a public profile and add the deny all inbound connections, says Paul. Then I switched to my public profile from the Little Snitch menu. Now, Mr. Tawchuk, in response to that email, said that this looks to be a new feature, and it sounds like it does do the kind of thing about which Corey was asking last week. Kind of a surprise, kind of a cool one.
This is why I love our listeners. Little Snitch is such a fantastic app, but honestly, I don't have it on all the time. In fact, it's been a while since I've needed it. So having someone point out a new feature just makes me all giddy inside. And did I just use the word giddy?
Giddy. You said giddy.
But this, if you set it up correctly, Little Snitch will act basically as a big brick firewall. To paraphrase Paul's email, your apps can still communicate with the outside world, and any inbound connections that those apps might need are allowed in, since the app created the connection to start with. But any other inbound connections, say from the shady-looking guy sitting in the corner over at the coffee shop, those all get rejected. If you're doing this at home, keep in mind that you might have some issues with external devices, syncing or sharing files, like Time Machine probably. Also keep in mind that Little Snitch runs on your Mac, so it affects only the Mac that it's running on. If you, for example, set up a Mac Mini as a router in between, you could install Little Snitch there, preventing bad traffic for your entire network. But as they say, that's another show.
And sadly, we've run out of time for this one. Hey, if you're looking for more security news and how-tos, though, the place to look is securemac.com/checklist. There you'll find notes not only for this show, but for the last show and the one before that, all the way back to the very first show. securemac.com/checklist. If you have a question you'd like to ask, as Corey did last week, or something you'd like to offer, as Paul did this week, or another topic you'd like to hear us hit, there is an email address. That address is checklist@securemac.com. The address again is checklist@securemac.com. And if you can't remember that, please do remember this. You're listening to The Checklist, brought to you by Secure Mac. And we'll talk to you next week.